Welcome to Strength Foundation.
What's up, Strength Foundation crew, and welcome back. If you're gearing up for that NSCA-CPT exam, you know Chapter 13 on exercise technique is a huge deal. So today, we're going to break down every key concept you need to know so you can walk into that test feeling totally confident.
Okay, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll cover the tools of the trade, all the equipment. Then we'll get into the non-negotiable rules for proper lifting, master some pro-level breathing techniques, and then get into the super important art of spotting. We'll even break down a specific exercise, and then we'll finish with a final exam lockdown to make sure all this stuff really sticks.
All right, first up, let's get our toolkit together. Look, before you can coach any movement, you have to know the tools you're working with inside and out. This is foundational knowledge, and you can bet you're going to see it on the exam. So the NSCA basically chunks resistance equipment into three big buckets. First, you've got constant resistance. This is exactly what it sounds like. Think free weights. A 45-pound plate is 45 pounds at the bottom of the lift, the middle, and the top. Simple. Second is variable resistance. You usually see this on machines that use a little cam or pulley system to make the weight feel heavier or lighter depending on where you are in the lift, matching your natural strength. And finally, there's constant speed or isokinetic machines, which you'll mostly find in places like physical therapy clinics. And this brings us to that classic debate, right? Machines versus free weights. For the exam, you've got to know the trade-offs. Machines are super stable and they lock you into a fixed path, which makes them great for beginners or for really isolating a muscle. Free weights, on the other hand, well, they force you to use all those little stabilizer muscles to control the movement, which translates way better to real-life strength in sports. All right, team, exam alert. Seriously, if you remember one single number from this section, make it this one. A standard Olympic barbell weighs 45 pounds, or about 20 kilograms. This pops up on the test all the time. It's a fundamental fact. Do not forget it. Okay, so now that we've got our tools down, let's talk about the rules of the lift. These are the core principles that make sure every single rep is not just effective, but safe. This is really where great coaching starts, so let's pay close attention. And it all starts with your hands. The two main grips you have to know are pronated, that's your classic overhand grip, palms facing down, and supinated, which is an underhand grip with your palms facing up. The names sound technical, but the concept is simple and absolutely essential. Now, when you combine those two, you get the alternated grip. One hand over, one hand under. The really crucial thing to remember for your exam is its main job. The NSCA specifically calls for this grip when you're spotting over-the-face exercises, like a bench press. Why? Because that opposing grip stops the bar from rolling right out of your hands. It's the safest way to spot that lift.
And here we go, another massive exam alert. The 5-point body contact position is a non-negotiable safety rule for any exercise where you're sitting or lying on a bench. Your head, your shoulders and upper back, and your butt have to be planted firmly on that bench, with both your right and left foot flat on the floor. This creates a rock-solid base of support. All 5 points are mandatory.
Okay, we've got our grip, we've got our body position locked in. Now let's talk about something we do all day long, but so often get wrong in the gym: breathing. How you breathe is key for producing force and staying safe.
The general rule is actually really simple. Exhale through the sticking point. That's the toughest part of the lift, the concentric phase, when you're pushing or pulling the weight. Then you breathe in during the easier part, the eccentric phase, when you're lowering the weight. Just remember, exhale on the effort.
Now, for more advanced clients doing really heavy structural lifts like a heavy squat or deadlift, the NSCA talks about the Valsalva Maneuver. This is where you briefly hold your breath against a closed airway during the lift. The whole point of this is to massively spike your intra-abdominal pressure. It basically turns your core into a rigid cylinder, which helps stabilize and protect your spine when you're under a really heavy load. But, and this is a huge but, here's the critical safety warning. You absolutely have to know this for the exam and, more importantly, for your clients. The Valsalva Maneuver can cause a big spike in blood pressure, so it is absolutely not for any clients with heart issues, metabolic problems, or respiratory conditions. You just don't recommend it for them, period. All right, let's move on to one of a personal trainer's most important jobs: spotting. When your clients are using free weights, your number one responsibility is their safety, and that almost always comes down to your spotting technique. So I've got a question for you, and it's a big one. When we're talking about power exercises, the really explosive stuff like a power clean, a snatch, or even a kettlebell swing, what is the absolute number one rule of spotting? The answer is simple, and it is absolute. You don't. You never, ever spot power exercises.
It is incredibly dangerous to even try. The athlete needs to be able to safely bail and drop the weight if they miss. Your job isn't to catch the bar, it's to make sure they have a clear, safe space to lift in and to coach them on how to miss correctly.
Now let's talk about another mistake you see all the time in the gym, this time with dumbbells. For something like a dumbbell bench press, people love to spot at the elbows. According to the NSCA, this is wrong and it's unsafe. The correct technique, the official NSCA standard, is to spot at the wrists. This gives you direct control of the weight and lets you guide the dumbbells safely if your client starts to fail.
All right, we've gone over all the principles, so now let's put it all into practice and actually analyze an exercise right out of the textbook, the curl-up. This is exactly how your brain needs to work on test day.
So here we have it, a classic curl-up. It's a fundamental core exercise, and for the exam, you need to know that the primary muscle being trained is the rectus abdominis. Some key coaching cues here are to keep the chin tucked to protect the neck and to do the movement nice and slow, with total control to really make that muscle work.
And just as important as knowing the right way to do it is knowing how to spot the wrong way. The book points out 2 common errors for the curl-up. Number 1, the feet lifting off the floor. That's a telltale sign that the hip flexors are doing all the work instead of the abs. And number 2, the hips lifting up on the way down, which means they've lost control. As a coach, you spot those things and you correct them immediately.
Wow, we have covered a lot of ground. It is time for our final exam lockdown. Let's run through a quick question just to make sure one of the most important concepts we talked about today is locked in tight.
Okay, pop quiz. This is an exam-style question pulled right from the book's study guide. When you're spotting an over-the-face barbell exercise, like a bench press, what kind of grip should you use? Think about it for a second. And the answer is an alternated grip, and you place your hands inside the client's hands. That alternated grip gives you the best possible security so the bar can't roll. And being inside their hands means you won't get in the way of their movement. That is a must-know concept. So there you have it, guys. The breakdown of equipment, the 5-point contact position, how to breathe correctly, and the crucial rules of spotting. Remember, these aren't just things to memorize for a test. This is the bedrock of safe, effective training. You have all the tools now. Review this, get back in your textbook, and start applying these principles. The only question left is, are you ready to go ace this section of your exam? You've got this.